So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the applicant webinar for Fleet Electric Vehicle Charging Equipment and Service Request for Proposal. This is an opportunity made possible by Anne Arundel County in partnership with the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, or the Resilience Authority. I do want to let you guys know that we are recording this webinar. We'll provide either a transcript or a full record and post it to our website at some point later this week or early next week. And anything else Zoom related, Kyle, that's worth noting?
No, I think that's it for now. I guess maybe one minor thing is the chat will be off, and Skip will explain in a few minutes how we'll be facilitating the Q&A. But don't worry if the chat is not working on your end. That's intentional.
Okay. And so real quick, my name is Matt Fleming, and I'm the director for the Resilience Authority, and I'm serving as the competition manager for this RFP. So I recognize several of the names who've been emailing over the past week. And for those who know me, I was a former coastal manager for Maryland and responsible for kind of the fisheries policy and coastal management for the state. And you're probably wondering, what does he know about EV infrastructure and fleet conversion? And that is why joining me here today, I have Miss Ellie Harris. She's the fleet administrator for Anne Arundel County. We have Miss Monica Downs. She's the energy manager for Anne Arundel County. And Miss Susan Harold. She's the director of Office of Central Services here in Anne Arundel County. And not only are they smarter on this issue than I am, they're generally just smarter than I am. So we're all in good hands. Also joining me is I have Christina Alexander. She's an associate with the Resilience Authority. She's been helping with the coordination of this project. And then Skip Swenson and Kyle Gray, they're with Throwe Environmental. And they've been instrumental in helping with the drafting of the RFP, looking at some national programs, providing us some insight, and as well as responding to some of the FAQs that came in over the last couple of weeks. The purpose of this webinar is to help applicants understand the basic components of the RFP. I do want to apologize. I know there's a delay getting the FAQs out and posted. And we continue to respond to questions as we could. And if there's any additional questions that come up that we're unable to address today, you'll have that opportunity to, we'll catalog those questions, and I'll explain here in a second how we'll do that, and we'll get back to you. I think, considering we'll give it another week so we can help resolve the questions that we can to ensure that we get the best possible proposals back in. So next slide, Kyle. All right. So for this presentation, I just want to provide a very quick introduction to the Resilience Authority. So I know that was a couple of questions that we received. I want to touch upon the drivers for this RFP, highlight some of the most pertinent information in the RFP. The RFP, if you haven't accessed it, it's available on our website, which is resilienceauthority.org. And maybe Kyle, if you can drop that in the chat or send the link out to the authority or to the RFP to the folks that have signed up. We can do that following whatever's easiest for you. And then what I'm going to do is to save time, to ensure we have time for question and answers. Two things real quick. One, I want to encourage you guys to look at the responses. We also posted that to the website. I think we received more than 100 plus questions that we responded to the best that we could. And we posted that to the website. So many of your questions may have been answered. And then as far as today goes, as far as question and answers, I'm going to flip this to Skip or Kyle, if you guys can explain the process for the Q&A for today.
I can step in on that. Thank you, Matt. Given the numbers that we have for folks that are participating in the webinar, it seems like it's going to be best for us to be able to gather all the questions and address them as many as we can today using the Q&A function of Zoom. So down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says Q&A. If you could use that, we're going to turn off the chat just so that it doesn't get distracting, and more importantly, that we don't miss any questions as we're going through. So please use that Q&A function when we get to that portion of the webinar.
Thanks, Skip. All right. So with that said, I do want to stress that we're all, here in the county, we're at the beginning steps of planning and prioritizing the EV infrastructure. So we don't have all the questions answered at this time. We'll certainly do our best to address your questions either today or in following this. But by design, the scoping of this project through the RFP is intended to ultimately identify a partner to help us determine the best overall path forward for the county as a whole. So next slide, Kyle. So just a very quick introduction to the Resilience Authority. The Resilience Authorities were created here in Maryland for jurisdictions that need a flexible, efficient way to fund resilience infrastructure projects. The authorities provide a structure for local governments seeking to address climate change in their communities through infrastructure projects, but puts the power in the local leaders' hands on how to decide to pay for them. Next slide, Kyle. In 2021, we were established as the nation's first multi-jurisdictional resilience authority. Our goals are to increase climate resilience by improving infrastructure and the environment, support economic growth in the region, foster innovation in the resilience space, and improve regional equity through resilience efforts. We're governed by a diverse board of directors and led by an executive director, that's me. We partner with communities, the city, and the county to identify priority issues and develop a portfolio of projects to mitigate the effects of climate change. As an independent body, we're uniquely suited to tackle expensive long-term infrastructure projects. We can operate outside the county and the city's budgets and debt ceiling restrictions. We have our own procurement policies and have the ability to draw on a whole range of funding options for our projects. We can charge and collect non-tax related fees, issue or sell state or local tax-exempt bonds, utilize local, state, and nonprofit funding, provide capital for projects. We can also combine any of these funding mechanisms and are not restricted geographically to allow infrastructure investment facilitate climate adaptation on a regional scale. And I just want to note that last part is, as we do represent both the county and the city of Annapolis, certainly the focus here is on the county's fleet infrastructure, but in the development of your proposal, if there are opportunities to eventually build on this where we can help I know the city is interested in electrifying their fleet. There might be opportunities to expand work here with the city. So noting that in your proposal might not be a bad thing. So next slide, Kyle. So motivations and priorities for this fleet conversion. This is kind of the drivers of why we're doing this. Anne Arundel County is committed to making meaningful reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. In order to achieve this goal, the county is making a significant investment in obtaining and promoting the use of electric vehicles for its county fleet. That's being led by Susan and her team. This includes the installation of charging stations in strategic locations throughout the county. In demonstration of the leadership by example, the county executive, Stuart Pittman, launched a conversion of the county fleet in July 2020 with the directive to central services mandating the purchase of infrastructure planning begin immediately so that by fiscal 2032, transition all procurement of non-emergency cars to 100% election, and by 2023, transition all procurement of new cars, including emergency sedans, crossover sport utility, to 100% electric by year 2037. Next slide, Kyle. I think just take a second, kind of a key message here. So as you consider your response and developing your response to this RFP, just kind of a key takeaway point. The county started working with Baltimore Gas and Electric as part of their BG&E EV Smart program around 2 years ago. The program allowed the county to have EV chargers available at county sites with no cost to the county. This helped provide some charging capability while the county determined the best overall path forward. Kind of the first step, and as you saw it with the county exec's directive, was to announce that the county is committing to transition its fleet, as much of its fleet to electric as soon as possible, starting with some purchases last year. The next step is to look at the charging network need to meet the county fleet demand so the infrastructure is available when vehicles arrive. On behalf of the county and through this RFP, we'll be evaluating, so this is kind of the takeaway here, is we'll be evaluating the market for businesses to partner with to install EV charging stations at county-owned facilities and help with us collectively determine the best overall path forward as a county as a whole. Next slide. So kind of just touching on some of the wave tops of the RFP. Section 1 of the RFP, it kind of outlines the purpose, background, scope of the project. The principal objective of the RFP is to identify a qualified vendor to plan, install, and operate an EV charging system to support the fleet of the county-owned EVs. We're seeking a vendor who can help us work through the following. 1, scoping the installation of EV supply equipment charging system, recommending options for long-term EV supply equipment ownership, provide recommendations for vendor service agreements, so think like maintenance, software, etc., and provide recommendations for future expansion of EV supply equipment infrastructure. I do want to stress, kind of like with any large infrastructure project or infrastructure upgrades, I think we're taking a start small, think big, or plan big component. So as you're developing your proposal, kind of take that in that thought, while we're initially starting charging infrastructure identified to the sites, if there's certain needs regarding electric conduit and parking spaces, or needs regarding to transitioning this on a larger scale or making this available to the public, think about that in your response to this RFP. So next slide, Kyle. So the scope of the project. So we're specifically we're seeking proposals to describe the following: the best course of action for the purchase, lease, or outsourcing of EV supply equipment, kind of the business model and why. Provide details regarding furnishing and installing EV supply equipment, so vendor selection, purchasing, permitting, describe demolition, network provisions, stall reconfigurations, and signage. How the EV network operations and maintenance will be provided. We're looking for a description of recommendations for long-term management of the equipment when the vendor service agreement expires. So is this renewal options, ownership transfer, is it removed? So describe that in your proposal, as well as we're seeking considerations, recommendations for expansion of the EV supply equipment to support the full county fleet and or future public use. Next slide, Kyle. It's kind of moving more into deeper into the proposal. Some kind of key dates moving forward. Again, I apologize for the delay in posting the FAQs. So as mentioned earlier, as we catalog questions that come in today, or additional questions that you have after this webinar, please send them to us and we'll get them responded. I think a good cutoff date will be like a week from now, so maybe December 8th. I guess it's a week and a day, so a week from tomorrow. That way, because we can ensure that you guys are doing the due diligence to get your proposals in on time. The next is deadline for submitting proposals is December 11th. We're looking to make the selection of the supplier by mid-January, so January 12th. Working on negotiation of contract that following week, with the hope that we're beginning to start contracts, everything signed by the end of January 24. And then proposals you'll see in the RFP, they are supposed to be submitted again to that email that you have in the RFP, and that's resilienceauthority@aacounty.org. We're looking to receive those by 11:59 on December 11th. Next slide. So slide 10. So proposal components. So, think here, supplier background and work experience. In my brain, think implementation ability is what we'll be looking at. So highlight the communities that you worked with over the last 5 years and the role that you played, the magnitude of the work, the status, etc. We're looking both here in Maryland and across the country. you don't have to have worked in Maryland. I think that was one of the questions received. So certainly if you did work nationally, identify that. What we're looking for is if you've done work here in Maryland, please list all of the communities you work with in Maryland, and as far over the last 5 years, and as far as across the country, maybe just the top 20 communities that you work with across the country over the last 5 years. We're seeking to understand kind of the implementation ability. So, understanding, do you have an understanding of the permitting regulations, both at the state and local level? So please describe that in your proposal. Describe key staff experience and certifications and training, and then identify subcontractors that if subcontractors that you plan to work with, as well as their experience. As far as approach goes, I would think of in terms of like implementation readiness, demonstrate that you understand what we're trying to accomplish, schedule for completing each of the elements of the proposal, as well as, creativity and innovations. Again, you guys are the experts in this field. So things that maybe we're not thinking about, new technologies, new advancement, new ways to capture reporting or metering, please describe that in your proposal. As far as systems operations and recommendations, this kind of, my brain goes into quality. The proposed equipment that you plan to use, track record, warranties, reliability, proposed usage tracking, how we're going to do metering and payment, and provide that reporting to the county. The marketing plan for the end users. Again, there are opportunities to build on any training that that the county can take advantage for the end user, as well as signage at the stations. And then please describe the overall options for the equipment when the agreement expires. Does it renew after every X number of years? Does it get it upgrade like an iPhone? Does it get turned over to the county to manage or be removed? Or, if you have options for all, please describe that and lay that out. Details, costs, I think this is pretty straightforward. Certainly, as you noted in some of your questions, there are some factors that are unique to each site that, may have to be estimated or not included in your proposal at this time. The one piece I did want to note is the projection of make ready, kind of that make ready costs. If there's an opportunity to look at future installation or expansion to the public, explain what that would be. This wouldn't necessarily, these costs wouldn't be factored into the cost of doing work now. But if you can lay out, if we continue this partnership, is there any price breaks, thresholds, or efficiency gain by continuing this contract or expanding upon it? And then operations and maintenance considerations, again, pretty straightforward. This is, we want to make sure, is this a break, if you break it, you bought it type thing, or is there ongoing service, and what does that look like? Next slide, Kyle. So evaluation criteria. While the overall cost to the county is an evaluation criteria, certainly that we'll be looking at. This is not a low bid solicitation. We'll be looking at, the overall quality and robustness. So in addition to cost, we'll be looking at, as I mentioned earlier, the ability of the applicant, the readiness of the project to proceed, the overall reliability and easy use of the equipment being proposed, the ongoing services provided, and the options for expansion, and how that's described within your proposal. Next slide. So for what we could answer at this time, I mentioned earlier, we did post the responses to the FAQ to our website. I also included, for the sites that we listed, we included some initial site locations, just to give you an idea of the layout if we were not able to arrange site visits, again, knowing that schedules are tough this time of year. I encourage you to look at these questions and the preparation of your response, because there's quite a bit of questions there, and folks may have had similar questions that you have in your brain right now. The sites that were selected, these represent some of the sites where there's the greatest number of overnight vehicles in the county fleet. The pictures, the maps provided, the site plans, they coincide with the list provided in the RFP. For some reason, when I posted the PDF, not all the colors transferred in the key. So when you look at these maps, just jot, and Kyle and I will work to get the updated, to get a cleaned up key up there. But the green line, that's proposed BG&E underground, kind of a proposed BG&E underground primary line. And then the blue line represents proposed site secondary service or a concrete encased PVC. And a couple of last things before we move on to the Q&A regarding some ingoing preferences. The county prefers that charging stations be of the same style whenever possible, understanding that market availability and technology may make this unachievable. Another ingoing preference is to have the J1772 EV connector at all charging stations, and then also one direct fast charger station for every 10 level 2 chargers at each location. Again, that's the ingoing preferences in your proposal. If you think there's other options that are worth considering that we should explore, please describe that and describe that why, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. So next slide, Kyle. So I think at this time, we're going to try to address some of the questions from the chat. Skip's going to help me out here, but kind of going through some of those questions, filtering out some of those that are duplicate. And certainly I'll be calling lifelines to Ellie and Monica and Susan, where we can answer questions that I am unable.
So at this point, we do not have any submitted questions. So if you do have them, again, please use that Q&A function, and I'll just read them off as they come in. And we can answer as many as we can in this presentation, but we'll make sure to get them all addressed and update probably our FAQ document that was linked, Kyle just linked. And the first question that we have is the county considering smart charging on networked chargers?
And again, I'll defer this to maybe Ellie, but I'll take a first initial shot at that. I think right now there is no, we do not have management software right now. I think the ingoing preference is a web-based software platform that will help us with reporting capabilities, kind of that's further described in the RFP. And certainly, Ellie, feel free to expand upon that.
Captured it, sir.
Okay.
Next question is, per the timeline, you're indicating starting in January. It's just more of a statement, but I think it's a question on what does the January timeline refer to? We have an end of January end date that we just listed earlier. What's the actual timeline for moving forward?
Yeah, and that's certainly, we negotiate through the contracting phase. I think that time frame was you're trying to get indication to potential applicants, when we'd make the selection, working through the contracting negotiations, and then trying to get a contract signed and in place before the end of January. That's that end of January timeline.
Next question is, for the list of communities you're requesting, what is the definition of community? Is it public sector customers or commercial, as well as retail, hospitality, etc.?
And again, I'll let Susan, Monica, and Ellie clean up anything here, but I think per the RFP, the initial investment is for the county's fleet vehicles. And then, I think we're looking for options and recommendations sought for potential expansion of the EVSE, including to publicly owned EVs at these sites when the vendor service agreement, during the vendor service agreement, or when the vendor service agreement expires. But the initial focus is on the county fleet. That you guys can say you're way off, Matt. So feel free.
Don't target Matt.
All right.
Okay. Will any federal funds be used or sought for this project?
So, and that's, that's a great question. Certainly one of the county has made a significant investment in this. One of my roles as a partner here is to seek, and I'm working with Ellie and Monica and Susan on it, to seek outside grant funding. But if the incoming partner has the ability to also work with us to acquire grants, to bring in funding, I would highlight that within your proposal. That is something worth noting.
Our next question is, the preface is, there may be an opportunity to provide energy savings on fleet vehicles and better build future charging stations if fleet usage is identified. Question is the county considering an upfront advisory service to better inform the infrastructure build out for the whole fleet and not just the initial tranche of vehicles identified here?
The short answer is yes.
Next question is, what types of fleet vehicles are at the 10 sites? Are they light, medium, or heavy duty?
So currently the county owns 10 light duty vehicles that are fully electric, with the plan to approximately add 1,200 of those. Preponderance would be light to medium duty. At this time, we're not looking at anything heavy duty.
Only other question I see here, so I'll invite any others if people have them, is since we're extending the Q&A deadline, are you willing to extend the due date for the proposals from the 11th of December to the 18th?
Yeah, right now we're not. There has been applicants who have already expressed interest in getting an application in early. So as of right now, we are not.
So at this time, I'm not seeing any other questions. Maybe we'll just give it another few seconds here to see if any last minute submissions come in.
Well, with that, I think it's, yeah. So with that, guys, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your interest in partnering with the county on this project. Certainly if you have questions that pop up as you begin to develop your response to this proposal over the next week, please send them to that email address. And I want to personally thank Susan, Monica, and Ellie for helping and being present today, and then Skip and Kyle for helping providing support here. So everybody have a wonderful rest of your day and have a great weekend.